Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Mari,
And I'm Matt.
and today we're talking about job interviews because honestly, interviews can feel terrifying when English isn't your first language.
And honestly, interviews are stressful even for native speakers. I had a job interview last year, and I barely slept the night before. I kept thinking about my answers over and over again.
Same. I think one of the hardest parts is trying to sound professional while also sounding natural because suddenly somebody asks about your experience, your background, your strengths, and your brain just freezes. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you want to improve your English with real conversations, useful vocabulary, and everyday expressions.
And if you enjoy relaxed English practice without feeling like you're in a classroom, you're in the right place. So grab your coffee, relax, and let's talk about job interviews in English.
And people always say interviews are a piece of cake after you get used to them. But before the interview, nobody feels calm. By the way, piece of cake is a great expression to use. It means something is very easy. Example, going to interviews is a piece of cake.
I disagree with that, Mari. Sorry. I also think many English learners become nervous because interviews have very specific vocabulary. Like, if somebody asks about your background, they're not asking where you were born or what your family looks like. They mean your professional background, your education, work history, skills, and experience.
Yeah, that word is super common in interviews. And honestly, interviewers usually start with easy questions to help people relax. They might ask things like, "Tell me about your background," or "What kind of experience do you have?" And I think the word experience is interesting because in interviews, people usually mean work experience, like customer service experience, management experience, or sales experience.
Exactly.
I remember when I first started having job interviews in English, I practiced answers for hours. I would sit in my room repeating things like, "I'm hardworking," "I'm attentive," "I work well under pressure."
Honestly, those are classic interview phrases. But they're still useful because they describe professional qualities very clearly. Like, if somebody says they're hardworking, it means they work seriously and make a strong effort. And if somebody is attentive, they pay attention to details. That's actually a really important quality, especially in jobs where small mistakes can create big problems.
And work well under pressure means you can stay calm during stressful situations, which sounds nice in theory.
Yes, in theory. I think another difficult part of interviews is talking about achievements, because a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking positively about themselves.
Yes, I always feel like I'm bragging. This means I feel like I am being a little arrogant telling about my qualities.
But achievements are important. They show what you've done professionally. So instead of only saying, "I worked at a company for 2 years," you can explain what you actually accomplished there.
Exactly. You can say things like, "I improved communication between teams," "I developed a new training system," or "I managed social media accounts."
And those verbs sound much more professional. Managed, improved, and developed are excellent interview words. And they help you sound more confident too. I also noticed that interviewers love asking about strengths and weaknesses. And honestly, I still hate that question.
Everybody hates that question because people never know how honest they should be. If somebody asks about your strengths, it's usually okay to talk about qualities connected to work, like being organized, attentive, responsible, or hardworking.
And if they ask about weaknesses, you don't need to say something dramatic. You probably shouldn't say, "I'm lazy and I hate people."
Definitely not. But it's okay to mention something realistic you're improving, like public speaking, time management, or confidence. Saying something like, "I'm working on my confidence," "I think I lack confidence sometimes."
I would never think you lacked confidence, Mari. You seem to be so confident.
But you just gotta tell them something, right? You can't say, "Sorry, I don't have any weaknesses. I'm perfect."
Exactly. This is great. It has to be something that doesn't affect their decision about hiring you, something silly and small you need to work on. The important thing is showing self-awareness and growth.
Another thing interviewers often ask about is the position or role you want. And those words are similar, but people use them slightly differently sometimes.
Yeah, position usually sounds a little more formal, like, I'm applying for a marketing position.
And role is often used when talking about responsibilities, like, what was your role at your previous company? And honestly, interview English can sound very formal sometimes. But after a while, you start noticing the same vocabulary again and again.
Once you learn the common expressions, interviews become less scary. Maybe not easy, but less terrifying. I also think people get nervous when interviewers ask about future goals, especially the famous question, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Honestly, I barely know what I'm doing next week.
But companies usually ask that because they want to understand your motivation.
And your answer doesn't need to sound perfect or extremely ambitious. You can simply say something like, I want to continue developing my skills, or I hope to lead bigger projects in the future.
And the verb lead is great in professional English. It means guiding or directing people or projects. Okay, let's talk about everybody's favorite interview topic, money.
I think many English learners confuse the words salary and wage.
Yeah, they're similar but not exactly the same. A salary is usually fixed, like a monthly or yearly payment.
And a wage is often connected to hourly payment. So somebody working by the hour may receive a wage. And honestly, discussing salary during interviews can feel uncomfortable, but it's completely normal. You can politely ask questions like, what is the starting salary for this position? Or, can you explain the wage structure?
There's also one expression I hear all the time in professional conversations. Well, in my experience, and honestly, I love this expression because it gives you a second to think.
That's true. Native speakers use expressions like that constantly. They help conversations sound smoother and more natural. So if somebody asks your opinion during an interview, you can say, well, in my experience, teamwork is very important. Or, well, in my experience, customers appreciate clear communication.
And honestly, phrases like that make your English sound much more confident. So today we talked about a lot of useful interview vocabulary and expressions. Things like background, experience, strengths, weaknesses, salary, goals, achievements, and professional verbs like managed, improved, and developed.
And honestly, the biggest thing to remember is that interviews are not about speaking perfect English. They're about communication, and the more interviews you have, the more natural they start to feel. Maybe they never become a piece of cake, but they definitely become easier.
And confidence grows with practice. So don't be afraid of making mistakes while speaking English. That's part of learning. And now tell us in the comments, what part of job interviews feels most difficult for you in English?
And which expression from today's episode do you want to start using first? Thanks for spending time with us today, guys. If today's episode helped you, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment because it really supports the podcast.
Honestly, reading your comments is one of our favorite parts of doing this. We'll see you in the next episode. Mari. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.